Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Not D&D. I'm your host, Jessica, and the show is brought to you by EN World Life, which is, of course, is part of EN World. And this week, I'm feeling very festive, as I have here with me in a very festive outfit, Nick. Nick, thanks so much for coming on and joining us.
Hey, Jess, thanks for having me.
No problem. And we are here to talk about your game, Hometown Holiday, which I was so excited to see when I saw this existed, and I'm delighted to see this existed. But we will talk a little bit about you and your background before we get into it. But yeah, let's just jump into talking about you as the guest. So, what do you do in tabletop RPGs? Making your own games. How did you get started with doing that?
Yeah, so I am a board game designer professionally, like in my day job, and then I was working at this story is probably going to sound the details of which are going to be a little familiar. I was working at Hasbro a few years back, not that part, but then we did a Extra Life crowdfund, and we played D&D at one shots and stuff. That was my kind of first foray into RPGs, doing these little one shots and stuff. And then eventually I didn't play too regularly, kind of like bounced off one kind of a longer campaign group. Then we did a one shot that I tried DMing for the first time, and just to show my complete lack of awareness of anything else at the time, it was D&D, the system, but my twist was that we were it was like 4 young kids in modern day America, and one of them is secretly an alien. And like, if I'd known better, I think that's basically just kids on bikes.
Yeah, it sounds a bit. Yeah. So you invented kids on bikes with a different
I didn't
system.
know that existed.
Okay, great. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
But I'd go to some conventions and things for work, and get to start playing in just little one-shot events, and started to explore other systems and things. And then started DMing a little bit over the pandemic, and I kind of had a couple different ideas in my head for like, I guess like these kind of things could work as games. And I had also just before the pandemic hit found out about sorry, I know Zine Month is the community one, the Kickstarter one. Cannot think of it. The thing where Kickstarter highlights RPG zines. I should know because I did my game through.
I can't remember the name, but yeah, that thing you're talking about. Sure, yeah.
I can remember the indie one, so that's good. Zine Quest, there we go. I ordered a couple games through Zine Quest, and that was just really eye-opening in terms of seeing these smaller games. They're way lighter on rules. I mean, like, when I was doing D&D, even when I was DMing, I will be honest, I never read through that booklet even a little bit. It was kind of like I had played in groups and learned how to play that way, and then I kind of it's like playing by oral tradition, But seeing these tiny books that weren't like just stacks and stacks of just rules upon rules, some of which maybe I'll use, some of which maybe I won't. It was just like, oh, this is like super straightforward. I think I strive for a lot in my day job too, is just like games that are super accessible and very light on rules and things like that. Just as long as you can get into the game as quickly as possible and still manage depth. And so that's kind of eventually what led me here. So right before I actually sat down and made Hometown Holiday, I kind of like had these ideas going through my head, like a lot of people in this time of year is watching a lot of these Hallmark Christmas movies with my now wife.
Right. Perfect. Yeah.
Just silly, fun stuff, so pretty mindless, and there's all these recurring tropes and things, and the recurring tropes and joking about this kind of what led to like, oh well, there's always these 6 kind of character archetypes, and wouldn't it be fun if those were your classes in a role-playing game? Around the same time, my friends who I was playing D&D with at the time had the idea that they wanted to do a charity live stream for the Trevor project, just to raise some money, just kind of like a nice thing to do around the holidays.
Sure.
And I was like, hey, I have this idea for kind of a holiday, like a Hallmark holiday game. So do we want to just like try that? And we did. And I ran a couple like 2 play tests beforehand. And then we just went live, and I GM'd the kind of beta version of Hometown Holiday for 12 hours straight.
12 hours?
Yeah, it was 4 different one shots, 3 hours each.
Back to back?
Yeah, the players would sub out, and I would just stay in and
oh my
GM a new story. It was great. It was a bunch of fun. We it started off
Yeah.
very simple, like very simple Hallmark plot, and then as the night went on, they got a little kookier. To the end was a heist, like a casino heist, Ocean's 11 style kind of thing.
A Hallmark holiday heist.
Yes.
Wow. I don't even know what
Um,
that would look like, but amazing. I would have been exhausted doing 12 hours of that though. Like I do an hour or two here or there, maybe 3 hours streaming, but 12 hours, that's a lot. That's
it
a lot of time.
it was a lot. I was dead by the end, but it's kind of exhilarating. It's you know, especially because it was the groups kept subbing out. So we had one group, a second group, and then two mixtures of those previous two groups. So the people were changing out. It was different stories every time, and I like to perform. So
Well, that's just as well. It seems like it all worked out great. So you were kind of like you're saying live streaming, and was this an early version of the game? Were the rules very different to what they are now?
they are pretty dang similar.
Okay.
We did a couple more playtests after that, and being able to run it this time back to back, especially with the same people back to back, which you didn't always get. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I find finding time and people and everything necessary to test RPGs is like a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like finding time to schedule a game that already exists that everyone has good faith in is something, and then be like, hey, instead of playing that thing we were planning on, how about we do this one that I don't know if it works or not. It can be challenging. So this was a good opportunity to test.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
but yeah, so basically some refinements, add in a couple little rules, but I really wanted to keep it as light as possible. My goal was to make this as beginner friendly. I found with the theme, um, for instance, my parents would always tune in every time we did the D&D streams for Hasbro, and they would be there and supportive, but they have no idea what's going on, even though I was like, oh, I thought that story was pretty simple and made sense.
Yeah.
And then they would tune in and watch this and oh, I perfectly understood what's going on. So I think that theme, already being familiar with like, okay, it's the setup of a TV rom-com. I know what's going to happen. I can follow what's happening. It's a world I'm familiar with. And I wanted to make sure that carried over into the rules to be something that is friendly to beginners.
Definitely. Well, like you say, I think when you're introducing a new game to somebody, if they know what the theme is, it's already so much more easy and comfortable for them to jump in because like they know the reference points, they know the tropes. So speaking of kind of the reference points and the tropes, shall we dig into the game a little bit and how it works? So how does character creation work?
So kind of the premise of the game, it's inspired obviously by Hallmark holiday movies and all those kinds of things. The premise is that each player is kind of their own protagonist in the same Hallmark rom-com. And they all have their own separate meet cute with a love interest played by the GM. And then for the rest of the game, they're trying to resolve the kind of standard plot, which is like, oh no, there's like a millionaire trying to destroy downtown, or the Christmas tree farm is in danger, or there's an ice skating tournament, something like that. And then kind of alongside that, everyone is vying for the affections of the love interest. So everyone's kind of like trying to do things, is trying to kind of save the day in an effort to impress the love interest the most, trying to like bond with them, but also resolve this kind of bigger plot together. So for the character creation, there's just 6 simple roles. We call them classes. They are like classes. We call them roles.
Yeah.
And they're all, like I said, they're all tropes. So this one that you're showing here, the heart of Main Street. So this is the plucky small business owner. Maybe they're overworked. They're used to having to be scrappy to make ends meet. But they're kept alive with their holiday cheer and things like that. So you'll see here, everyone has a name, a 2-sentence backstory. I find from my own experience that just works best with like any RPG. It's just like you can know what you are, you can know the more fleshed out details of your character, but if you can give it to me in 2 sentences, that's really easy for everyone to work with and for everyone to remember.
Yeah.
And then you choose one skill. So here you can be crafty, and it means that it's just your character can be like, oh, I'm experienced putting things together, store displays, things like that. So that might give me some sort of advantage putting things together physically at a later point. Or you can have this other skill or local shop, and that just says I'm more familiar with the townspeople, and they all trust me, and I know this kind of eclectic group of kind of maybe strange downtowners, all with their own quirky personalities. So you just choose one of those, you get your 2 sentence backstory, and you're good to go. There's 3 stats: sweaters, cocoa, and cheer, which is your basic like kind of
amazing. Yeah.
my body, mind, soul kind of thing that you see done in a lot of RPGs. Just
yeah.
almost, just slapped with a coat of holiday paint.
Of course. So what do those stats kind of do?
So sweaters is kind of like your physical prowess, your strength if you know like lift something up. Basically anything for physical tasks. Cocoa is like your mental acuity, so you know how quickly you might put something together, how good your memory is. If there's like there's not like puzzles in this game, but if there's some sort of problem you need to solve, you're going to be the one to go to. And cheer is kind of it's kind of like your charisma, and also just kind of what it says on the label. It's your holiday cheer. That's your plucky can-do attitude. That's kind of going to get you through the situation and might inspire others.
Yeah, I love the theming with those skills. Were there any other kind of ideas you threw around to have, represent them with different words or stuff, or were these like obviously it's going to be your sweater, cocoa, and cheer?
I think there were probably a couple other ones. I can't remember what they were, but they would have. I want that like 1 sentence. Cheer I find is a little more self-explanatory than sweaters and cocoa, but it's kind of a vibes thing. Like when I think like sweaters, I think like sturdy and like warm, and that's like obviously the shape of a body. And I think cocoa, I'm thinking like, oh, like I have my hot cocoa or I have my coffee, and I'm like thinking so very vibes based.
Perfect for the game, like 100% what this game is. It's amazing. So character creation obviously is really quick, so something you can do at the table before the game, so it's not like people need to look up stuff beforehand and things. And then I also see we have secret objectives.
So this is just a little extra thing in the game. So at the beginning of the game, everyone rolls. There's a list of 6 secret objectives on every character sheet. At the beginning of the game, you roll a d6. You pick a corresponding one. You don't share it with anyone, and then that just gives you an extra little thing to try to do throughout the game. So, for instance, here, if you rolled a 2 at the beginning of the game and you're the heart of Main Street, you have a secret objective to sabotage a competing business. And so that just kind of gives you, because I want the character creation to be so straightforward and like basically 0 prep, that can kind of help inform some of your character decisions while you're going. That gives you a little extra thing to hold on to that you might not have thought of before. And it just brings the story in interesting directions. Functionally, the game is actually a competition. It is who, normally who, the GM is keeping track of, oh, this person had a good interaction with a love interest, or they've done something that really impressed them, or, oh boy, they really messed up and made a fool of themselves in front of the love interest. So there's kind of this loose point tracking system. Typically the person who ends up with the love interest at the end, they share 1 chaste kiss and the game ends. And usually they go on to be the winner. But if someone was in like 2nd place and they completed their second objective or their secret objective and the first person didn't, then they're the winner. It's really not about that. It's like technically a competitive game. I think that's some holdover from my board game design, and I fiddled with leaving it in or taking it out. But while I think that like who wins actually doesn't really matter, it's everything that all these things add on in terms of, like I said, like the secret objective gives you an extra little tidbit to add to your character. Not worrying about winning, but just knowing that's a competition, even if you're caught up in the storytelling, kind of might get you to at the end of the day, this game is going to be a lot of flirting with your friends, which we all joke is like, that's what you do in RPGs. But that's something like I'm not always comfortable with, something other people aren't always comfortable with. But when there's glory to be had at the end, sometimes that's that little extra motivation you need, where it's like, I'm in this to win. I'm going to be the most charming rom-com protagonist I can, kind of a thing. And so everything works to kind of to those ends, even if the spirit of the game isn't quite competition. The spirit of the game is just telling a story. I find that these things help bring newer people in.
Definitely. And I think you mentioned there, like, flirting with your friends. Like, obviously, this is a romantic comedy RPG. So it's not going to be anything, like you say, it's going to be a chaste kiss. There's nothing too salacious going to be happening. But you are going to be, like, flirting and role-playing romance with people. So what kind of, like, guidance or safety tools do you recommend for people coming to play the game for the first time?
There is one safety tool. I actually don't know if I reference it in Hometown Holiday. I typically like the lines and veils. I always point people to
Yeah.
that. And just generally like starting out, you know, I have a group of people I play with, and we kind of all know each other's comfort levels and things at this point. But new group of people I find especially like, hey, is there anything we don't want to address? Is there anything like stay away from this that you're not quite comfortable with? And just creating a safe environment. In this game, talking about like no salacious stuff, I think part of it you can lean on is what I explain in the rules is that this is it's poking fun at Hallmark holiday stuff, but it's also fully embracing it, and so that means all the romance stuff is completely just like sexless in like an almost comedic extent.
It's like a Disney movie or something, you know?
Exactly. We're like they're gonna like get really close to it, but it's gonna be in a weird way, and it's gonna be like sterile almost. And I guess I encourage people to embrace that. I have like that kind of awkward flirtation where it's like, oh, that man is shirtless, but that's it. We saw that shirtless man, and we smiled, and that was it. Kind of a thing. So I think with this game, it's really I talk about some other stuff too, where it's like I think games are art. Playing games is art. I think playing role-playing games especially is such a good way and oftentimes a safe way to explore a lot of darker things, a lot of things that we're not comfortable with, a lot of things that maybe we feel about ourselves, but we don't want to talk about outright. And I think games should address those. I think games should absolutely address uncomfortable things, permitting everyone is comfortable and things like that. I mentioned in the game, that's important. This game, like, that's just not the tone. You can, if you really want to. This system is not really going to support that. I encourage people to, as much as they can, like, take on the tone, because it is a familiar theme. And people know what that tone is. I encourage people to really play into that kind of silly, chaste genuineness kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like you're saying, role-playing games are like an art form in the way that movies can be as well. And some movies deal with some different themes and stuff. And this game is very much of the genre. It's a loving parody of. Would that perhaps be an homage to in the game? Okay, awesome. So we've got the setup, so we know what the theme is. We've got our characters. What does a game look like? Like, and how long would a game kind of take? And how would someone running the game structure the narrative of the story?
Yeah, so pointing back to movies, pointing back to fully embracing the inspiration for this game is I say the game should take 2 to 3 hours, a one shot. That's the length it takes to watch one of these movies with commercials.
Okay, yeah.
So the amount of time you'd be spending in this world anyway. And the structure I give is 3x structure. I don't know if it's the true 3x structure, just something approximating it, but the recommended setup is Act 1 is all the meet cutes. So we introduce each player character in their own scene, in their own environment, and their own quick meet cute, their own quick introduction to the love interest. So maybe if I'm the store owner, I'm in the store, I'm talking to my to my friend or to my coworker, and the love interest comes in, and we have this, we bump into each other, we have this cute interaction.
I fall off the ladder when I'm stacking the shelf, and they catch me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then
I'm so in this genre. Yeah, carry on.
They leave. That scene ends. We go to the next person. Their role might be dating a jerk, and they've come home from the city with their just real Christmas holiday hating yuppie boyfriend. And they're driving down Main Street, and oh no, we had a low impact crash with the love interest. This is my favorite go-to moment.
Yeah.
Having the love interest be hit by a car, and then
you gotta love that.
A lot.
But they're not really hurt. It's fine. It's
Oh
fine.
no, they're not hurt. They of
Yeah,
course they stand up, they brush it off. Their sweater is slightly damaged. No big deal. But then that gives them a talking point to then that character,
yeah.
and then and so on. So we go around. That's Act 1. The end of Act 1, throughout Act 1, we're starting to introduce kind of what the plot of the session's going to be. So that could be that there is there's an old cranky shop owner who's trying to buy the rest of the Main Street stores, and that could include the Heart of Main Street store, and they're going to close it all down, shut down the holiday festivities, things like that. And so we find ways, as you're going, you can kind of find ways for everyone to be connected and how that all impacts them. And most of all, it needs to impact the love interest, because the characters need to be invested in how the plot affects them, but they also want to, if that connection is maybe not is a little more tenuous, if the love interest cares about what's going on, they're trying to impress the love interest, and so they're trying to save the day on account of that. So then we say Act 2 is we introduce the problem as to why the love interest and the players can't be together, and it's usually because there's something else going on. And from this point on, we try to keep everyone in the same room as much as possible so all the characters can interact. And I find that even though it's technically a competitive game, everyone is always on the same side. And again, that just goes back to the tone of the genre, where it's like we're all cheery, we're all going to be friendly with each other. And then Act 3 is we are resolving that issue, and we are wrapping things up, and someone ends up with a love interest, maybe 2 other characters paired up. I've had it before where nobody ends up with a love interest. Because they just turn out to be like not a very likable person.
Plot twist.
But then there were other NPCs that came up, and people fell in love with them, or the players fell in love with each other.
That's such a role-playing thing to happen. Everyone comes obsessed with this random NPC that was not going to be a big deal, but you're like, okay, fine. I guess we all care about this random NPC that I had nothing for. Go ahead. That's the most role-playing thing I've ever heard. That's great.
And so I find like using that structure, there's really not too much prep needed. It's GM, the players. I've had people just pull up at a table before, never played before, and just be like, okay, I want this role. I choose my name. Okay, I'm dating and jerk. I can think of a two sentence backstory. We're good to go. And then the GM just needs to know kind of what the basic plot is, and then like a name for the love interest, and kind of good to go from there.
Amazing. So and it sounds like it'd be quite fun to GM, because you could create quite convoluted, ridiculous scenarios for them to be in, because that's so in the genre. So it doesn't matter if it's like, that doesn't sound realistic, because that's what those movies are all about. There's all these massive coincidences that you're like, really?
There's coincidences, there's magical realism, sometimes there's just magical unrealism, right? It can just really go. I have a little table in the back, a D66 table that just kind of gives plot suggestions, and we say for your first game, only choose options 11 to 21, 26, because you roll two die. Die 1 is digit 1, die 2 is second digit, and then after that they get increasingly wackier. So there's one at the end that's like it's just like Agatha Christie. The love interest is hosting a party at their mansion, and there's been a murder.
Oh wow!
So like it can be real simple to like, the love interest is wants to win the figure skating contest, but they have a rival who's trying to sabotage them. To like, there's ghosts, and who knows what happens.
So a whole range of different stuff there. What kind of tips would you give to someone who's going to be running this game for the first time? So what kind of guidance and advice would you give to them?
I would say to just keep it loose. I am someone like before I started kind of getting to my own games and designing stuff. I was someone who would do a lot of prep before sessions. And I think obviously do the kind of I'm gonna prep you're interested or you feel comfortable with, but I would say use these kind of these rules like one shots as an opportunity to explore, to kind of push your improving abilities. And what I found is that kind of allows everyone at the table to shine. I mean, when you're playing this, you're gonna have a group of like 4 to 6 people. There's not going to be an awkward pause or any kind of hold up, because everyone's going to be excited about, like, they know what a Hallmark holiday movie is they're excited to come in with their jokes and their tropes and things. And so I think this is a good one to just try going in and kind of letting everyone shine, letting everyone collaborate without necessarily knowing where it's going to go.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I think another key part of prep for this would be to watch some cheesy holiday romance films, obviously.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Know your source material would be the key thing there. Speaking of like kind of cheesy holiday kind of films, you mentioned this earlier on in the book Inside. You say how obviously a lot of these holiday movies we're used to feature like it's predominantly like Christian, and the people in them are like kind of white, able-bodied, things like that. But I think you mentioned that you don't have to play it that way, and you kind of encourage diversity in that. And I think it was really, really great to see you kind of put that in. What made you want to kind of stress the importance of that in the game?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I need to go let my wife into the apartment real quick. I'll be back.
Okay, no worries.
Sorry.
Okay, no problem. All right. Well, we're just talking to Nick here, Nick Tourville, talking about Hometown Holiday, the tabletop RPG. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat and we'll happily answer them for you. So this is really a rules light system that's coming into play here. And if you've ever wanted to start your own cheesy holiday rom-com, this is the RPG for you there. So if you have any questions, pop them in the chat. Nick's just popped off quickly for a moment, but we'll be back momentarily. I believe they might be back now, so I'm just going to pop them back on the stream.
Sorry about that.
Hello, Nick. No problem. These things happen. So I was just talking. Yeah, so I was just mentioning in the book how we're saying you can have a range of kind of different characters and things like that. And if we could just talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry. You did a wonderful lead-up question. I was like, oh, I gotta go. No, yeah, like I said, I think one of the really wonderful things about RPGs is that you can come to the table and whoever you are in any way and kind of act and kind of do all this exploration, find out all these things. And yeah, I think there's a really good sense of this in a lot of the indie RPG scene of just encouraging diversity and things like that. And I don't know, it just kind of seemed like a no-brainer. I didn't want people to be turned off looking at the game and seeing that it's oh, it's like Hallmark Christmas movies, and then being like, I guess that's not for me. I didn't want anyone to feel like this. I wanted this game to be as approachable as possible. I mean, I want all my games to be as approachable as possible and for everyone to be able to play. But this especially with it being something that is so much in the public conscious, and it's frankly it's like a trendy thing to like goof on Hallmark movies, the past couple years. And I didn't want anyone to feel excluded from that experience. And like, I don't know. I feel like to an extent saying like, hey, you can play as whoever you are should be, I don't know. It almost seemed redundant, but I do think it's important to acknowledge that like, hey, just because like this experience of goofing about this thing should not be held by a group of people, like that should be a fun thing that we can all enjoy together and explore that however we want to.
Definitely. Yeah, I completely agree. It was really great to see you kind of put that in the book and make sure that was part of it, so people can tell all sorts of different kind of stories, so you can have your own very own completely queer hometown holiday and make it whatever holiday you want as well. So yeah, that was really great to see. Really pleased to have that in there. So we're coming up to the part of the show where I'm going to ask you to talk about other tabletop RPGs. And you did put in the NPC phone book in some of the images you sent me. So could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So this was actually my Zine Month crowdfunding project from this last year that just got finished up, just ordered the physical copies and just launched on itch. So it's not a game itself, it's a supplement. But hey, look, there's a link. Thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a supplement. I worked with the amazing illustrator Reagan Tickard. So it's a collection of over 60 NPCs. I talk about 2-sentence backstories. These are like 2 to 3 sentence blurbs of just here's a character with a silly name, and here's like just a premise of who they are. Sometimes it's something really really simple, just about a character. Sometimes who the character is really informs what the world is, but the idea is if you're doing your you're doing your GMing prep and you need to throw a character in there and you're like, I want to add some little interesting thing to this, this is just a resource of characters that you can pull from. And I kept the blurb short to because one, I wanted to make them system agnostic. I wanted this whole thing to work with any system. So there's characters who are fantasy, there's characters who are like contemporary, there's characters who are sci-fi, and I wanted it to be able to work with any system, to be able to use this resource. And sorry, I forgot where I was going.
No, it's no problem. So and someone in the comments even said mash this up with Hometown Holiday to feature those characters, so that could be a way to use it. So that's the idea. Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. Hometown Holiday is supposed to be really goofy. These characters are, I like to think that there's some interesting premises going on here. One of my favorites is it's a character named Dark Patricia, and she's kind of the trope of, oh, I'm the evil clone of this other person. But the other person died before they ever met Dark Patricia. Normal Patricia died before Dark Patricia ever met her. Completely unrelated. And so Dark Patricia is just this, like, I don't know, kind of like walking existential crisis of like, I am supposed to be the evil person of someone who does not exist anymore. So I think there's some like interesting concepts there, but they're also all kind of silly. That I just wasn't writing like 60 funny little guys that every one of these 60 little guys also has something interesting going on that you can use to inform your game world. But
amazing. That all sounds great. And I didn't even mention, so if people have heard about Hometown Holiday and they're like, yes, 100%, it is now December, I want to play this one shot with my friends, where can they get a copy of this? Where's the best place to go?
Yeah, if you're looking for digital copies, you can go to my itch page, kidnick.itch.io there on the screen. You can also go to started getting distributed through Indie Press Revolution, so you can go on there, get a PDF, and it's also it's starting to be sold physical copies around the US, but I think I don't know for sure. If you want a physical copy, IPR will ship to the US and I think certain other parts of the world, but I don't know for sure.
Maybe. Well, we can get in touch and ask you there. And if anyone has any questions, you're on Twitter as well for the moment. Well, Twitter still exists.
Yes, so I'm on Twitter, KidNick1. I've always been on Tumblr, but not posting. But now I'm posting more on Tumblr because Twitter's gross anyway. So
yeah, well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. So tumblr.com/blog/kidnickgames is the link. I'm glad it's there because I would not have remembered.
No problem. So it's on the screen if you're watching live, and if you're listening to the podcast, the links will be in the show notes for all those wonderful places there. So is there anything you want to share about Hometown Holiday? Anything that I forgot to ask you, or any closing statements you want to make about the game?
Yeah, there's one feature I want to call out that if you're playing or if you're interested in playing, you're like, I don't know, maybe I'm a little apprehensive about jumping in and being one of these main characters, or the flirting aspect honestly just kind of makes me uncomfortable. I want to take a backseat to that. One of the 6 roles is the friend, which plays on the trope of the kind of omnipresent friend that's always in these movies. That they're always giving sage advice. They're always just there, frankly. So the friend is there in every scene. But the way that they could win the game is just by giving good love advice to the other players. So they don't have to do any of the flirting. They can if they want to. One of their secret objectives is to end up with one of the player characters. But yeah, so that's just another little thing that, it sounds interesting, but you don't want to, jump in all the way. It's an easy way to try it.
That's really great. And I love that because the friend is always there, and they seem to only exist for the protagonist and don't have their own stuff going on. Like the protagonist's like, oh my gosh, this is happening to me. And the friend's like, I'm right there. And it's like, do they not have a job? Do they not have like their own stuff going on? Absolutely not. No.
That's a thing in the game, actually. Everyone writes a 2-sentence backstory. The friend does not have a backstory. They just literally put it there.
There's something that feels so sad and deep
No,
about
no,
that.
it totally is. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, correct. Talk about existential crisis we're talking about earlier. Okay, that's great. But yeah, so Hometown Holiday, you can check that out and get that on the links we've just mentioned there. So Nick, I also want to ask you before you go, which I ask everyone, is do you have any recommendations for indie tabletop RPGs? The rules are it can't be a game that you've made, because we've just spent a bit of time talking about your game, and it can't be Dungeons and Dragons either.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, one of my absolute favorites to play with my group who I do RPGs with, like we're doing D&D, now we're doing Monster of the Week. Sometimes like not everyone can make it to a session. Sometimes it's like we want to get together and play, but we're just not feeling the like weight of like going into like a campaign and like the kind of heavier stuff.
Sure.
Parsley by Jared A. Sorensen is really fantastic. Like I talk about striving to make beginner friendly games. Like Parsley is the, I think, best example. So the premise, if you're unfamiliar, is that it is kind of like an old school text adventure.
Okay.
Where it's like you're in a room, there's an exit to the north and the west, and you type in
Yeah,
north.
yeah.
And so I think those games might predate both of us, but
It's kind of you to say, but no. But yeah.
But the GM has a book basically where it lists everything that you say. So like if I'm the GM, it says exactly everything I say. I give the options. I can elaborate. Like there could be like a hiker on the trail, and you can talk to the hiker, and the book gives you specific interactions with the hiker. But then you don't actually like elaborate or anything more if you need to. But it's really easy to play by the script. And what's great is for the players, if you're up first and you say go north, and it goes to the person sitting to your right, and they say pick up the egg, and then person to them says go west. And so it just cycles through everyone getting to say one simple thing, working as a group, because everyone is controlling the same kind of player character and just taking turns. And so it's just super lightweight. It gets super silly. There's different, if you buy the book, I think it has like a Western one and like a haunted house one, and like, it ages from very kid friendly to, I don't think it ever gets like adult, but yeah. So
Perfect. I love that. That's a great recommendation. And we'll see if we get them on the show next year, because that's secretly why I ask all my guests about it. So I can just get recommendations for future guests. So Nick, thank you so much for giving up your time and coming on to tell us about Hometown Holiday. I hope you enjoy the holidays. I can see you're already in the festive spirit with your jacket. Thanks so much for coming on to share your game with us.
Yes. Hey, thank you so much. This is such an honor to be on. I was looking at the guest list and being like, oh my God, there's so many big names here, and they want me here too.
Of course.
I'm gonna give a quick shout out to A.A. Voigt here, to Aaron Voigt here, who is sending in a comment. They do awesome RPG. They review much like your show. They review games over on YouTube. So
awesome!
People shout them out too.
So it's a great way to find other indie tabletop RPGs.
Yes,
perfect. Well, with Not D&D, we will be back next week. We're talking about a sports anime RPG called Play Ball. So come back same time next week. But yeah, thanks so much for listening. And Nick, thanks again for coming on.
Thanks,
Bye.
Jess.